I woke to the sharp crackle of flames. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Maybe it was a campfire or a summer barbecue. But then the thick, acrid smoke pouring through my half-open bedroom window snapped me out of it. It wasn't a dream. My chest tightened as I threw off the covers and bolted to the window. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. There in my driveway, my motorcycle, my state-issued patrol bike, was engulfed in fire. Flames leapt and twisted around it, gnawing at the frame and licking the pavement below like some hellish bonfire. The metal was already warping under the heat, paint blistering away in blackened chunks. Instinct kicked in. I spun for the door, stumbling as I grabbed for the fire extinguisher by the kitchen. But even as my bare feet smacked against the cool concrete of the porch, I knew I was too late. The fire was too far gone. I felt the heat slam into me as I stood helpless, watching my ride burn to a charred skeleton. Then I heard it. Laughter. I turned my head slowly, disbelief freezing me in place. Across the street, a small group stood clustered on the immaculate lawn of the house opposite mine. They had wine glasses in their hands, glinting under the porch light as they clinked them together. Toasting. Celebrating. At the center of the group stood a woman in a tailored cream-colored suit. Pearls glinted at her throat, and she wore the kind of smug expression that screamed, "I won." She lifted her glass toward me in a mock salute. "Next time, follow the rules, Officer Keller," she called out, her voice sweet as syrup and just as sticky with condescension. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought I might snap a tooth. The woman was Lydia Prescott, the president of the Homeowners Association, and the people beside her, her loyal board members. The HOA, or, as I come to think of them, the neighborhood mafia. For a moment, I stood frozen, not out of fear or shock, but because I was trying to process the sheer audacity. I dealt with criminals who ran from the law, street racers with death wishes, and the occasional nutjob in a back alley. But I had never seen suburban homeowners commit an outright felony over something this petty. And yet, here we were. 2 days ago, they'd come knocking at my door with what they called a welcome packet. In reality, it was a veiled threat. A neatly stapled handbook of their so-called community guidelines, all delivered in voices so fake-friendly it made my skin crawl. They made it clear that joining the HOA was strongly encouraged. Translation: fall in line, or else. I had politely declined. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. Within 48 hours, the notices started arriving. First, I was fined for my lawn being half an inch too tall. Next, they cited my patrol bike as an eyesore and non-compliant. A $500 fine for parking a state-owned law enforcement vehicle in my own driveway. Ideologa. And then I'd toss their notice straight into the trash. Apparently, they hadn't appreciated that. The fire department showed up quickly, sirens howling as red and white lights painted the scene like some twisted carnival. Firefighters scrambled to put out the blaze. One of them, a guy I knew named Kel Bennett, walked over as the last flames died down. "Damn, Luke," he muttered. "What the hell happened?" I exhaled slowly. HOA happened. His eyebrows shot up. "You serious?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My face said it all. I had cameras. High-def, motion-sensitive cameras. And when the last hose was packed away and the smoldering mess of what used to be my patrol bike was cooling in the driveway, I went inside and pulled up the footage. It played out like a horror movie. At 2:43 a.m., 6 people slipped onto my property. Lydia Prescott leading the way. Behind her, Harold Munson, the balding accountant who always wore sweater vests, no matter the season, lugged a 5-gallon gas can. He poured over my bike like he was watering flowers. Right behind him, Marla Fitch, Lydia's right-hand enforcer, struck a match. The flame danced for a moment before she dropped it. The explosion was instantaneous. They jumped back, laughing, toasting each other like it was the 4th of July. They had no idea the cameras caught every second. No clue they just committed felony arson against state property. A federal crime. And they definitely didn't know who I really was. Sure, they knew I was a cop, but they assumed I was just another patrol officer. What they didn't realize was that I was a state trooper. I had jurisdiction that extended far beyond this sleepy suburban Hell's Cape, and they had just made themselves my number one priority. I sat back in my chair as the footage ended, a slow smile pulling at my lips. They had screwed up, royally. The next morning, by dawn, I was standing in my front yard, arms crossed, watching the HOA board gather for their usual gossip session by the community garden. Lydia was there, of course, still in pearls, still smug. She shot me a look over her shoulder. "Such a shame about your motorcycle," she called. "Perhaps next time, you'll follow the community guidelines." I smiled, a slow, wolfish grin. "Oh, I definitely will," I said, my tone light. "In fact, I think it's time we had a little discussion about it. Maybe down at the station." For a moment, she stared at me, confused. "The station?" I reached into my jacket and flipped open my badge. Let the sunlight catch the gold just right. Her expression drained of color, like someone had flipped a switch. The pearl white of her face matched the necklace around her throat. "State trooper," I said casually. "And I believe you and your board committed felony arson against government property last night." She took a step back, then another. The rest of the board shuffled nervously, suddenly less confident than they'd been a few hours ago. "I'll be seeing you soon," I said. And with that, I turned on my heel and went back inside, leaving them standing there like deer in headlights. Later that day, I spent the morning preparing my report, burning copies of the footage, and forwarding everything to my buddy, Officer Miguel Torres, at the station. He called within minutes, laughing so hard I thought he might choke. "You're telling me a bunch of suburban retirees and soccer moms committed first-degree arson on a state trooper's bike?" he said, wheezing. "Yep." "Oh man," he chuckled. "This is going to be good." We set the wheels in motion. Arrest warrants were drawn up. Everything was airtight. By noon, I was ready. The HOA meeting was at the community clubhouse. I figured I'd pay them a visit. When I walked in, the room fell silent. Every board member was there, sitting at the long, polished conference table. Lydia was at the head. Her hands were clasped tightly together, knuckles white. "Mr. Keller," she greeted, her smile brittle. "What brings you here?" I said nothing. Just walked forward, pulled out my phone, and played the footage. No one spoke as the images flickered across the screen. The gas can, the match, the fire. By the time it ended, Harold Munson was sweating so hard I thought he might pass out. Marla Fitch looked like she was going to be sick. I slid the phone back into my pocket. "We need to talk," I said. The panic was instant. Harold bolted from his chair, babbling about how this was all a mistake. I cut him off with a look. "See, he sat. Lydia tried to keep control. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted. I leaned forward. "You accidentally poured gasoline on my bike?" "Accidentally, how much?" "Accidentally," he celebrated while it burned. Her mouth opened, closed. No words came out. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "In about an hour, officers will be at your homes with arrest warrants. Felony arson, destruction of state property, conspiracy. You can't do this." Lydia shrieked. "Oh, I can," I said, "and I will." Right on cue, the doors swung open. Officer Torres and another deputy walked in, arrest papers in hand. "Good afternoon, folks," Torres said brightly. "We've got a few things to clear up." The fallout. Chaos erupted. One board member fainted. Another tried to run, but was tackled before he hit the door. Lydia screamed about harassment. Torres just smiled as he cuffed her. "Ma'am," he said, "you set a cop's bike on fire. We're well within our rights." One by one, they were loaded into squad cars. I watched it all unfold from the front steps of the clubhouse, sipping my coffee. For years, they'd bullied the neighborhood. Now, they were just criminals in cuffs. Torres clapped me on the back. "Never thought I'd see the day," he said, grinning. Suburban vigilantes. Who knew? Aftermath. The arrests made headlines. The trial was swift. The footage left no room for doubt. Lydia and her closest cronies got jail time. The rest were slapped with heavy fines and community service. The HOA was dissolved almost overnight. The neighborhood voted, and not a single soul wanted to revive it. People celebrated. Fireworks, cookouts, block parties. One guy put up a banner that read, "HOA free zone." I personally oversaw the demolition of the HOA office. In its place, we built a park, barbecue pits, picnic tables, a playground, a community space, free from rules about fence heights or lawn gnomes. At the first cookout, Torres showed up and laughed when he saw the sign over the grill, Anti-HOA Cookout. "You're never letting this go, are you?" he said. "Not a chance," I replied. One last thing. A few weeks later, a new guy moved in. Greg seemed nice enough. "So," he said, nodding at the park, "thinking of starting a new HOA?" I stared at him. "Greg," I said, "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that." He laughed nervously. I handed him a burger. "Good call." As the sun set and fireworks painted the sky, I leaned back in my chair and took it all in. I come here looking for peace. I found something better, a community worth fighting for, and it tasted damn good.